Oliver Pierce's feathers ruffled as he watched the scene unfold before him in the elegant living room. His bright eyes tracked Natalie's every move as she roughly handled baby Ethan, her actions hidden from the security cameras by carefully chosen blind spots. The parrot shifted uneasily on his perch, distressed by what he witnessed day after day. Amelia and Daniel had adopted Oliver years ago, long before Ethan came into their lives. The couple worked demanding hours at their respective medical practices, which led them to hire Natalie as Ethan's full-time nanny. On the surface, she appeared perfect, experienced, well-recommended, and always properly dressed. But Oliver knew better. When Amelia and Daniel were home, Natalie was the picture of devotion, cooing at Ethan, singing lullabies, and providing detailed reports of their daily activities. The moment they left, however, her demeanor changed completely. Her gentle voice became harsh, her tender touches turned rough, and baby Ethan's cries were met with cruel indifference. Oliver had always been an unusually perceptive bird, picking up on subtle changes in mood and behavior. His previous owner, an elderly language professor named Vincent, had spent years teaching him not just to mimic words, but to understand context and meaning. Now those lessons served a vital purpose, as Oliver observed the mounting tension in the household. The parrot noticed how Ethan would wail in distress whenever Natalie entered the room, how she would grab his tiny arms too tightly when moving him, and how she would ignore his cries for hours. But what troubled Oliver most were the whispered phone conversations he overheard late at night when Natalie thought everyone was asleep. "The plan is almost ready," she would murmur into her phone, pacing near Oliver's cage. "Once I get access to their accounts, yes, I know what to do with the baby. No one will suspect anything." Oliver's vocabulary was extensive, but he struggled to find the right words to communicate the danger. He tried various phrases: "bad lady," "baby crying," "help needed," but Amelia and Daniel merely thought he was mimicking random phrases, as parrots often do. Their dismissal of his warnings only made Oliver more determined to expose the truth. One evening, while Amelia was feeding Ethan before bedtime, Oliver noticed Natalie in the kitchen, mixing something into the baby's formula. His heart raced as he watched her carefully measure drops from a small, dark bottle, her movements precise and deliberate. The parrot's instinct screamed that this was wrong. That night, Oliver made a decision. He had to find a way to protect Ethan, no matter the cost. But how could a parrot convince humans of such a serious threat? As darkness fell over the house, Oliver remained awake, his mind working through possible solutions while Natalie's shadowy figure moved through the rooms below, preparing for whatever sinister plan she had in motion. Bianca, Amelia's sister who lived nearby, would sometimes visit with her daughter Chloe. Oliver noticed how Natalie's behavior would shift subtly during these visits, a flash of annoyance crossing her face when Bianca appeared unannounced, the way she would hover nearby during conversations, and how she would quickly redirect any questions about Ethan's care. As Oliver watched Natalie closing the curtains for the night, he caught a glimpse of her true expression in the window's reflection, a cold, calculated look that sent chills through his feathers. The parrot knew time was running out. Tomorrow he would have to find a way to make them understand, or Ethan might face consequences too terrible to imagine. The weight of this knowledge kept Oliver alert as the house settled into silence. Through the darkness he could hear Ethan's soft breathing from the nursery, punctuated by Natalie's footsteps as she moved around downstairs. The parrot's keen ears picked up the sound of drawers opening, papers rustling, and the quiet beep of a phone being used. What Oliver didn't realize was that his chance to expose the truth would come sooner than expected, and in a way that would shock everyone in the household. As the night deepened, he remained vigilant, knowing that tomorrow would bring either salvation or disaster for the innocent baby sleeping nearby. Morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. Oliver watched as Amelia prepared for another busy day at the hospital. Her movements hurried, but gentle as she kissed Ethan goodbye. Daniel had already left for an early surgery, leaving Natalie in charge once again. The parrot's anxiety grew as he observed the nanny's practice transformation, her warm smile dropping the moment Amelia's car disappeared from view. "Time for your medicine, little one," Natalie cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she approached Ethan's high chair. Oliver noticed she wasn't carrying the usual medication prescribed by the pediatrician. Instead, she pulled out the mysterious dark bottle from the previous night. Ethan began crying immediately, as if sensing something wrong, his tiny hands pushing away the bottle Natalie pressed against his lips. "Stop being difficult," she hissed, her gentle facade cracking. "Just drink it." Oliver couldn't contain himself any longer. "No! Bad! Poison!" he screeched, flapping his wings frantically. The sudden outburst startled Natalie, causing her to drop the bottle. It shattered on the kitchen floor, its contents spreading in a sinister puddle. Natalie's face contorted with rage. "Stupid bird!" she snarled, advancing toward Oliver's cage. "You've been watching me too closely, haven't you?" Her fingers gripped the cage bars tightly. "Well, we'll have to do something about that." Just then, Bianca's voice called from the front door. "Hello? Anyone home?" She had a habit of dropping by unannounced, much to Natalie's constant irritation. The nanny quickly composed herself, kicking the broken glass under the cabinet and wiping the spilled liquid with her shoe. "We're in the kitchen," Natalie called back, her voice honey-sweet once again. Oliver watched as she hastily cleaned up the evidence, noting how she stuffed the glass shards into her pocket rather than the trash. Bianca entered with young Chloe in tow, carrying a basket of fresh muffins. Her eyes immediately went to Ethan, who was still crying. "Is everything okay? He seems upset." "Oh, he's just being fussy about his breakfast," Natalie explained smoothly. "I know how babies can be." She lifted Ethan from his high chair, bouncing him with apparent affection. But Oliver noticed something else, a small notebook that had fallen from Natalie's pocket during her hasty cleanup. It lay partially hidden under the kitchen table, its pages containing what looked like numbers and notes in her precise handwriting. While the women chatted, Chloe wandered over to Oliver's cage. The young girl had always been fascinated by the parrot, often sharing secrets with him during her visits. "Hello, Oliver," she whispered, slipping him a piece of her muffin through the cage bars. Oliver saw his opportunity. "Help Ethan," he whispered back, remembering how Vincent had taught him to string words together meaningfully. "Bad lady hurts baby." Chloe's eyes widened. Unlike the adults who dismissed Oliver's warnings as random chatter, children often paid more attention to animals. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. "Poison in bottle," Oliver continued, his voice low but urgent. "Notes under table." Chloe glanced at the kitchen table, noticing the notebook with the casual curiosity of a child. She walked over and picked it up before anyone could stop her. "What's this?" she asked innocently. Natalie's reaction was instant and violent. She practically shoved Ethan into Bianca's arms and lunged for the notebook. "That's private," she snapped, her careful mask slipping again. The sudden movement and harsh tone made Ethan wail louder, and even Chloe stepped back in surprise. Bianca, still holding the crying baby, noticed the strange tension in the room. "Is everything all right, Natalie? You seem different." "Everything's fine," Natalie insisted, clutching the notebook to her chest. But her composed facade had cracked, revealing something darker underneath. "I think it's time for Ethan's nap. Perhaps you could visit another time." Bianca didn't move. Instead, she looked more closely at Ethan, noticing for the first time the slight bruising on his arms where Natalie had gripped him too tightly. Her maternal instincts, already aroused by the tense atmosphere, went into higher alert. "I think I'll stay for a while," Bianca said firmly, her voice taking on a steely edge that Oliver had never heard before. "In fact, I might call Amelia and see if she can come home early today." Natalie's expression shifted again, calculating and cold. "That won't be necessary. I have everything under control." She reached for Ethan, but Bianca took a step back. "Chloe, honey," Bianca said calmly, though her eyes never left Natalie, "why don't you go call Aunt Amelia? Use my phone. It's in my purse by the door." Oliver watched the scene unfold with growing tension. He could see Natalie's hands twitching, her eyes darting between Bianca, Ethan, and the front door. The notebook she held contained evidence of something, perhaps her plans, her true intentions, or worse. "Hurt, baby," Oliver screeched again, louder this time. "Bad lady poison." "That bird has been nothing but trouble," Natalie said, her voice tight with anger. "Always making noise, interfering with Ethan's sleep. I've suggested to Amelia that we should get rid of it." "Really?" Bianca replied, her suspicion growing. Amelia loves that Parrot. She's had Oliver for years, and she's never mentioned anything about getting rid of him. The tension in the kitchen was broken by the sound of Chloe's voice from the hallway. "Aunt Amelia, can you come home? Something's wrong with Natalie." Natalie's composure shattered completely. She made a sudden move toward the front door, but Bianca blocked her path. "You're not going anywhere until Amelia gets here," Bianca declared, her free arm extended to prevent Natalie from passing. Oliver watched as Natalie's face transformed into something truly frightening. Gone was any pretense of the caring nanny, replaced by a calculating coldness that confirmed every suspicion he'd had. "You don't understand," Natalie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This was supposed to be perfect. I had everything planned. The baby would get sick, nothing too serious at first, but with my special medicine, he would get worse instead of better. Amelia and Daniel would be devastated, too distracted to notice the missing money until it was too late." Bianca gasped, instinctively holding Ethan tighter. "You were going to poison—" "Bad lady poison, baby!" Oliver screeched again. The sound of a car screeching to a halt outside made everyone freeze. Footsteps pounded up the front walk. Amelia had arrived home in record time, likely breaking several speed limits in the process. The scene she burst in on would be forever etched in her memory. Bianca backing away from Natalie, clutching Ethan protectively. Chloe hiding behind her mother. Oliver flapping and screeching in his cage, and Natalie looking nothing like the caring nanny she'd pretended to be, holding a notebook full of secrets that were about to be revealed. The next few moments would change everything, but Oliver knew his job wasn't finished yet. There were still darker truths to be uncovered, and the full extent of Natalie's plans had yet to come to light. The Parrot watched intently as Amelia took in the scene before her, knowing that the real storm was just beginning. Amelia stood frozen in the doorway, her medical coat still on, stethoscope dangling from her neck. The tension in the kitchen was thick enough to cut with a knife. Her eyes darted between her sister holding Ethan, Natalie's threatening stance, and Oliver's agitated state. "What's going on here?" Amelia demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to handling crisis situations. Before anyone could answer, Oliver's voice rang out clear and precise, shocking everyone with its clarity. "She hurts, baby. Poison in bottle. Look under cabinet." The Parrot's words were unmistakable this time, no longer random phrases, but a coherent warning. Amelia's eyes widened as she processed this unexpected revelation. Natalie lunged for her purse, but Bianca was quicker. "Chloe, grab that bag," she called to her daughter. The young girl snatched Natalie's purse just as the nanny reached for it, spilling its contents across the floor. Among the scattered items was a collection of vials, syringes, and what appeared to be hospital prescription pads. Amelia gasped as she recognized the labels on the vials. As a doctor, she knew exactly what they were, powerful sedatives and medications that should never be anywhere near a baby. "Those are from my hospital," she whispered, the horror of realization dawning on her face. "How did you get these?" Natalie's composure cracked completely. Her laugh was hollow and bitter. "You doctors think you're so clever, don't you? Always too busy saving other people's lives to notice what's happening in your own home. Did you know your precious Ethan cries for hours when you're gone? That he flinches when I come near him?" Bianca held Ethan tighter, noting the slight tremor in his tiny body at the sound of Natalie's voice. The baby's reaction spoke volumes about what he had endured. "Check her notebook," Oliver squawked insistently. "Numbers, plans." Amelia picked up the fallen notebook, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. Inside were detailed notes about the family's schedule, bank account numbers, and what appeared to be calculations for steadily increasing doses of various medications. "It was perfect," Natalie spat, her facade completely gone now. "I had access to everything. Your home, your baby, your accounts. The plan was simple. Make the baby sick slowly, just enough to worry you, but not enough to raise suspicion. While you were distracted with his declining health, I would handle your finances, your bills, your accounts. Handle our accounts." Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. "Your signatures weren't hard to forge," Natalie continued, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "And grieving parents rarely check their bank statements carefully. By the time Ethan's condition became critical, I would have transferred enough money to disappear completely. The devastated parents would be too broken to notice the missing funds until it was far too late. The sound of Ethan's whimper cut through the tension like a knife. Amelia took a step forward, her professional calm warring with maternal fury. "How many times?" she demanded. "How many times did you hurt my baby?" Natalie's silence was more damning than any answer could have been. Oliver, however, wasn't finished. He began rattling off more names. Sarah Thompson, Michael Anderson, baby James. Names that meant nothing to the family, but clearly meant something to Natalie, judging by her reaction. "Shut up!" she screamed at the parrot. "Shut up! Shut up!" But Oliver wouldn't be silenced. "Other babies, other families, look them up!" Amelia pulled out her phone with trembling hands, quickly searching the names Oliver had spoken. Her face grew paler with each search result. They're all families who lost babies under mysterious circumstances. All of them had nannies who disappeared afterward. The revelation hung in the air like a thundercloud. Natalie wasn't just a fraud, she was something far more sinister. A systematic predator who had made a career out of targeting wealthy families, harming their children, and disappearing with their money. Just then, the front door opened again. Daniel had arrived, likely called by Chloe when she contacted Amelia. His presence seemed to trigger something in Natalie, perhaps the realization that her carefully constructed plan was completely unraveling. "You don't understand," she said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "This wasn't just about the money. I wanted to prove a point. All you wealthy doctors with your perfect lives, thinking you can buy good childcare like you buy everything else. You never really checked my references, did you? Never really verified my credentials?" Daniel's face drained of color. As if in answer to his unspoken question, Oliver began rattling off phrases, conversations he'd overheard, details about Natalie's past, evidence of her previous crimes. "The police are already on their way," Daniel said, positioning himself between Natalie and the door. "Bianca called them right after she contacted Amelia." Natalie's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. She seemed to be calculating her chances, weighing her options. The sound of distant sirens made her decision for her. She bolted toward the back door, but she hadn't counted on Oliver. The parrot had been watching, waiting for just such a moment. As Natalie ran past his cage, he extended his wing through the bars, catching her sleeve. The unexpected snag was enough to throw her off balance. She stumbled, crashing into the kitchen table. The fall sent her sprawling to the floor, the contents of her pockets scattering across the tile. Among them was a small USB drive that skittered under the refrigerator. "Evidence?" Oliver screeched. "Under fridge, more proof." The sirens were getting closer now. Natalie lay on the floor, the fight seeming to drain out of her as she realized there was nowhere left to run. But there was something in her eyes, a cold, calculating look that suggested this wasn't over yet. The police were pulling up outside, their red and blue lights painting the kitchen walls in alternating colors. But Oliver kept his eyes fixed on Natalie, remembering something he had overheard during one of her late-night phone conversations, something about a backup plan and insurance. The parrot had a feeling they hadn't uncovered all of Natalie's secrets yet, and the worst might be yet to come. Amelia held Ethan close, tears streaming down her face as she examined every inch of her baby, cataloguing any signs of abuse or neglect she might have missed. Daniel stood guard over Natalie, his doctor's oath to do no harm visibly warring with his paternal instincts. But it was Bianca who noticed something odd about the way Natalie was lying on the floor. Despite her fall, despite being caught, there was a slight smile playing at the corner of her mouth. It was the smile of someone who knew something others didn't, someone who still had cards left to play. As the police entered the kitchen, Oliver ruffled his feathers uneasily. His warnings had helped expose Natalie's immediate plans, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. The parrot watched as the officers began to secure the scene, knowing that his job as protector wasn't finished yet. Whatever Natalie was still hiding, whatever her backup plan entailed, Oliver would remain vigilant until all her secrets were exposed, and Ethan was truly safe. The kitchen had transformed into a crime scene. Police officers photographed evidence, while detectives interviewed family members. Ethan had been taken to the hospital for a thorough examination, with Amelia accompanying him. Daniel remained behind to assist with the investigation, his medical expertise proving valuable in identifying the various substances found in Natalie's possession. Oliver watched from his cage as an officer retrieved the USB drive from under the refrigerator. His sharp eyes hadn't missed how Natalie's slight smile had widened when they plugged it into a laptop. Something wasn't right. "Careful! Trap! Trap!" Oliver screeched, but his warning came too late. The moment the drive was accessed, every computer in the house began emitting a harsh beeping sound. Screens flickered and went dark, and the home security system suddenly deactivated. "It's a virus," one of the officers announced. "She's wiped everything. Security footage, computer files, everything that could have contained evidence of her activities." But Natalie's satisfaction was short-lived. Bianca stepped forward, holding up her phone. "Not everything," she said. "I've been recording since I arrived this morning. Every confession, every threat, it's all here." The smirk vanished from Natalie's face. She hadn't counted on Bianca's quick thinking, hadn't factored in the protective instincts of a sister who had sensed something wrong the moment she walked in. Meanwhile, Chloe tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mum, remember when Oliver started talking to me? I did what you always taught me. I took notes in my diary, everything he said, everything I saw." The detective's interest was immediately piqued. "You have notes? From how long ago?" Chloe nodded earnestly. "I write down everything when we visit. Oliver started trying to tell me things weeks ago, but I didn't understand at first. Then I started noticing things too. How Ethan would cry when Natalie came near, how she would act different when she thought no one was watching." The detective gathered Chloe's diary as evidence, praising her observant nature. But Oliver remained agitated. There was still something else, something important they were missing. "Phone calls. Night talks," he squawked insistently. "Others involved." This caught everyone's attention. The detective turned to Natalie, who had gone notably pale. "Other people involved? Care to explain?" Natalie's silence spoke volumes. The detective signaled to his partner, who began reviewing the call logs from Natalie's seized phone. The numbers told a disturbing story, regular calls to multiple burner phones, all during late-night hours. "She's part of a network," Daniel realized, his voice heavy with horror. "She's not working alone." As if confirming his words, Natalie's phone suddenly lit up with a message. Before anyone could stop her, she managed to glance at it, and her composed mask slipped completely. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. "You don't understand," she whispered, all pretense gone. "They'll come for me. They always come for anyone who gets caught." "Who will come for you, Natalie?" The detective leaned forward. "Give us names and we can protect you." But Natalie shook her head violently. "You can't protect me. Nobody can. They're everywhere. Hospitals, childcare agencies, reference services. How do you think we get our credentials? How do you think we find our targets?" The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about one malicious nanny. It was about an organized group, targeting vulnerable families through seemingly legitimate channels. Oliver, however, wasn't finished. He began rattling off addresses and fragments of conversations he'd overheard during Natalie's late-night calls. Each word was another piece of evidence, another thread unraveling a conspiracy that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. The detective was furiously taking notes, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "We're going to need witness protection," he muttered to his partner, "for all of them." Daniel's phone rang. It was Amelia calling from the hospital. The examination had revealed traces of various substances in Ethan's system, but thankfully nothing had caused permanent damage. They had caught Natalie's scheme before she could fully implement her sinister plans. But as relief washed over the room, Oliver noticed something that made his feathers stand on end. Natalie's fear had vanished, replaced by that calculating look he knew so well. She was watching the officers catalogue evidence, her eyes tracking every bag, every document. The Parrot suspected she was already planning her next move. "Watch her. Don't trust," Oliver warned, drawing attention back to Natalie just as her hand moved toward her collar. Our sharp-eyed officer caught the movement and rushed forward, discovering a hidden needle. "Suicide pill," the officer announced, securing the evidence. "Classic spy technique. She wasn't planning to live long enough to talk." This discovery changed everything. The detective immediately called for additional security. Natalie would need to be watched constantly, both to prevent her from harming herself and to protect her from whoever she was working with. As Natalie was led away in handcuffs, she passed by Oliver's cage. For a brief moment their eyes met. In that instant, Oliver saw something in her expression that chilled him to his core. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. At the hospital, baby Ethan was recovering well. The doctors had flushed the harmful substances from his system, and his bright, curious eyes showed no lasting signs of trauma. Amelia hadn't left his side since they arrived, her medical training and maternal instinct working in tandem as she monitored every aspect of his care. Daniel entered the hospital room with news from home. "The police have found something," he said quietly. When they searched Natalie's apartment, they discovered detailed files on at least 7 other families, all with young children, all with busy professional parents. Amelia's hands trembled as she adjusted Ethan's blanket. "How did we miss it? All the signs were there." "We saw what we wanted to see," Daniel replied, the guilt heavy in his voice. "A perfect nanny who seemed to solve all our problems." A nurse appeared at the door with Oliver's travel cage. "Someone insisted on coming to visit," she smiled. The Parrot had been uncharacteristically quiet during the ride to the hospital, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. Now seeing Ethan safe in his mother's arms, Oliver let out a gentle coo. "Good baby," he said softly. "Safe now." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, thanks to you, he is." Meanwhile, the investigation into Natalie's network was expanding rapidly. Detective Morgan, who had taken charge of the case, arrived with a tablet filled with preliminary findings. The USB drive may have erased your home computers, but it also contained embedded tracking data, he explained. Every time Natalie used it, it recorded her location. We've mapped out meeting spots, safe houses, even what looks like a training facility. "Training?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowing. "Yes," Morgan nodded grimly. "We believe this group recruits women with certain psychological profiles, trains them to gain the trust of wealthy families, and teaches them sophisticated methods of embezzlement and forgery. The child abuse appears to be both a distraction tactic and something worse." "Worse how?" Amelia asked, though her medical mind had already begun connecting the dots. "Control," Morgan said simply. "Make the child sick, make the parents grateful when they recover, create dependencies on the nanny who helps during the crisis. It's psychological manipulation on multiple levels." Oliver suddenly perked up, his head tilting toward the hospital room door. "Man with glasses," he squawked urgently. "Bad man coming." Morgan reacted instantly, drawing his weapon and moving toward the door. In the hallway, security cameras caught a man in hospital scrubs with a visitor's badge hurrying away from Ethan's room. When security guards approached him, he bolted, dropping a syringe that later testing would reveal contained a potent neurotoxin. How did he know? Morgan wondered aloud, staring at Oliver with newfound respect. He saw him before, Bianca realized, entering the room with Chloe. "Chloe's diary mentions a man who visited Natalie at the house when we weren't supposed to be there. Oliver must have recognized him." The incident prompted immediate action. The entire family was moved to a secure location, while the police operation to dismantle Natalie's network intensified. Oliver went with them, his cage placed near Ethan's crib as both comfort and sentinel. In the days that followed, the true scope of the conspiracy emerged. What the media dubbed the nanny network had operated across multiple states, targeting not just wealthy families, but specifically those with influence in banking, healthcare, and law enforcement, positions that might have inadvertently shielded the network's activities. Natalie, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a maximum sentence, finally broke her silence in exchange for protection. "It started as a money scheme," she confessed to Morgan during a lengthy interview. "Target rich families, gain access to their finances, siphon funds gradually. But then, our founder, Maxwell, developed a more ambitious vision. He wanted to create dependencies, to infiltrate these families so completely that even if we were discovered, the parents would be too broken, too guilty, to fully cooperate with authorities." "And the children?" Morgan asked, his voice controlled, despite his disgust. "Collateral damage," Natalie replied, unable to meet his eyes. "We were told not to cause permanent harm, just enough to create the crisis atmosphere we needed, but some of us went further than others. Oliver's testimony, carefully documented through his consistent phrases and warnings, proved invaluable in court. Legal experts created a precedent-setting case for admitting animal communication as evidence, supported by cognitive specialists who verified Oliver's exceptional language capabilities. One by one, network members were identified and apprehended. Maxwell Perkins, the founder, was arrested trying to flee the country. His background, a former child psychologist whose license had been revoked for ethical violations, explained the sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques the nannies employed. As spring turned to summer, the family began to heal. Ethan, showing the resilience of the very young, returned to being a happy, thriving baby. Amelia and Daniel had made significant changes to their lives, rearranging their work schedules to spend more time at home and implementing an extensive vetting system for any new caregivers. Bianca and Chloe visited more frequently, the bonds between the sisters strengthened by the ordeal they had faced together. Chloe, recognized by the police department for her careful documentation of Oliver's warnings, had developed a deeper interest in animal behavior and communication. "Do you think he really understood everything that was happening?" she asked her mother one afternoon, as they watched Oliver interact gently with Ethan, the baby giggling as the parrot performed his favorite trick of pretending to fall over backward. "I think he understood enough," Bianca replied. "He knew someone he loved was in danger, and he did everything in his power to protect them. Sometimes that's all understanding we need." Oliver's cage had been moved permanently into Ethan's nursery, but it rarely contained the parrot anymore. He preferred to perch on the special stand Daniel had built near the crib, keeping his watchful eyes on his young charge. At night, when the house settled into silence, Oliver would softly whisper, "Safe now," until Ethan drifted off to sleep. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Morgan arrived at the house with news about Natalie's ultimate fate. "She'll serve time," he explained to the family gathered in the living room, "but her cooperation has been instrumental in dismantling the entire network. Every single member has been identified and apprehended." "What about the other families?" Amelia asked, thinking of the names Oliver had rattled off that fateful day. "They've all been contacted," Morgan assured her. "Those still with their children are receiving support and counseling. For those who suffered losses—" He paused, the weight of tragedy momentarily overwhelming him. "At least they now have answers, and the knowledge that those responsible have been brought to justice." As Morgan prepared to leave, Oliver flew to his shoulder, an unprecedented gesture from the normally cautious bird. "Good man," Oliver said clearly. "Thank you." Morgan, a veteran detective not easily moved, found himself blinking back unexpected tears. "No, thank you," he replied sincerely. "Without your warnings, we might never have uncovered this." That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a new sense of peace settled over the household. The nightmare was truly over. Maxwell's network had been completely dismantled, with sweeping reforms implemented in childcare licensing and background checks across the country. Amelia raised her glass in a toast. "To Oliver," she said, "our guardian and hero." Oliver, perched contentedly on his stand, bobbed his head as if acknowledging the honor. But his focus, as always, remained primarily on Ethan, watching over the baby with unwavering dedication. Later, as Daniel was preparing Oliver's evening treat of fresh fruit, he found himself reflecting on how profoundly their lives had changed. "You know," he said to Amelia as she joined him in the kitchen, "before all this happened, I always thought of Oliver as just a pet, an unusually clever one, but still just a bird we kept in a cage." "And now?" Amelia asked, leaning against his shoulder. Daniel watched as Oliver delicately fed a small piece of apple to Ethan, the baby's chubby fingers grasping at colorful feathers with gentle curiosity. "Now I think he's shown us something profound about what it means to be family," Daniel replied. "It's not about blood or species or even communication in the traditional sense. It's about protecting each other, noticing when something's wrong, and being brave enough to sound the alarm even when no one seems to be listening." The lessons of their ordeal had rippled outward, touching countless lives. Bianca had started a support group for families who had experienced similar betrayals of trust. Daniel had established a foundation funding research into animal cognition and communication. Amelia had helped develop new protocols for identifying signs of abuse in pre-verbal children. And Oliver, he had become something of a local celebrity, with news outlets and research universities requesting interviews and studies. But to those who knew him best, he remained simply Oliver, the perceptive, loving parrot who had saved a family by understanding that sometimes the greatest act of communication is the persistence to keep trying until someone finally hears what you're saying. As night fell and the house grew quiet, Oliver settled onto his perch in Ethan's room. Through the window he could see stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. In the crib beside him, Ethan slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. "Family safe," Oliver whispered into the darkness. "Family, protect family." And in those simple words lay the deepest wisdom of all, that love, in its purest form, sees beyond barriers of language and species, beyond misunderstanding and doubt, to the essential truth that binds us to one another. For Oliver, it had never been about abstract concepts like heroism or justice. It had been about Ethan's safety, about preventing harm to a baby he had come to love as his own. In the end, his extraordinary actions had sprung from the most ordinary of motivations, the desire to protect those who matter to us. As the years passed, Ethan would grow up with this story as part of his personal mythology, how a parrot named Oliver had saved him from danger before he was old enough to remember. It would shape his understanding of courage, of communication, of what it means to truly see the world around you. And though Oliver's lifespan would not match a human's, his legacy would continue through the foundation bearing his name, through the lives he had touched and through the family that would always remember how, in their darkest hour, salvation had come on brightly colored wings and a voice that refused to be silenced. In homes across the country, new safety measures and verification systems were being implemented, inspired by what the media had dubbed the Oliver Protocol. Families were learning to trust their instincts, to listen more carefully to warnings that came in unexpected forms, and to remember that sometimes the most important words are the ones that seem, at first, to make the least sense. For the network that had preyed on vulnerable families, there would be no more hunting grounds, no more victims. Their legacy of fear had been transformed, through Oliver's intervention, into a legacy of awareness and protection. And for Oliver himself, there was the simple satisfaction of a job well done, a family protected, a future secured. Each morning, he would greet the sun with a cheerful whistle, secure in the knowledge that his voice had been heard when it mattered most. In the end, that was all any of us could hope for, to speak our truth and have it understood, to protect those we love, to make the world a little safer through our presence in it. Oliver had done all that and more, and the whistle of warning had become a song of triumph. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.